Hello and welcome to Dugout Debrief. I'm your host, Chris DeLuca. This is Boom Broadcasting's one, first, and only baseball-centric podcast, and we are once again back here going into our second week of the baseball season. We're in our first full week of the baseball season here, coming up here on Thursday. We're in our second series of the week, and yeah, I'm once again very excited. We've gotten to take a look at some regular season starters here being, playing more consistently. Some teams have started really hot. Some teams have started not so hot. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the, unfortunate news first. We'll get that out of the way as we do our news segment every single week here in Dugout Debrief. Jurickson Profar was suspended for 80 games due to testing positive for PEDs. The medication that he tested positive for was indeed a performance enhancing. It was a testosterone booster. So it wasn't like it was one of those kind of, borderline ones where maybe it will heal an injury faster or something like that. Something that you can make an argument for, well, he just wanted to get back on the field quicker. This was a testosterone booster, and he signed a 3-year, $42 million deal with the Braves. So it's more bad news for them as they're off to the worst start out of all 30 clubs. There are 29 other clubs right now. And, the timing with it is interesting, to say the least. I mean, last season he had a 3.6 WAR. He had 24 career home runs and batted 280, 14th in MVP voting. Also got an all-star and a silver slugger. I mean, he was the best at his position offensively. And now, he was a highly touted prospect. And in this year, first good year that he had pretty much in his career, first outstanding year that he had in his career, and test positive. So it's interesting to see this still happening, but I think we'll continue to see it happen because a lot of people are always kind of shocked when we see this, but I'm never really shocked because players are going to do what they can to succeed. And for the most part, he's probably still going to get paid that 42 mil. So really in the end, how much does it matter? If you decide to use PEDs in the last year or so of your contract, especially if you're a guy like Profar that's kind of been bouncing around the league, was at once a very highly touted prospect. And now, I won't say that he was fighting to stay in the league necessarily, but he definitely wasn't an elite player before this. But the Braves saw something in him and paid him, and it's unfortunate for them because they didn't know that he was using PEDs. So that news out of the way, not much else to be said. Braves are off to a pretty rough start. As of Wednesday, they were the only winless team left, which is very surprising. I mean, they were my pick to come in second or third, be a wild card. They have started as of Wednesday, it started 0 for 6. So we'll see how they do later. But either way, not a good start for Atlanta. Next, we're going to go talk about the Torpedo bats briefly. I know that's the big talk of Major League Baseball right now. I don't really have a lot of takes on it, to be completely honest with you, because these bats have existed for a long time. They're more just in the mainstream right now because the Yankees hit 9 home runs in one game, which we'll be talking about that here in a second too. And a lot of their guys use them. They're completely legal and they have a wider barrel. So the Yankees basically did research on the fact that most people know this, that if you hit it right in the sweet spot, right on the label there, you're going to more than likely hit a home run or at least hit it farther. There's going to be more pop. And that has a wider sweet spot. There's rules about what the bats can be made of. There's rules about how long they can be. And there are some rules, I believe, about how wide they can be. But if you just widen the sweet spot, kind of a little exception to the rule there. So they're not cheating. They're legal. It's not like they're corking their bats or anything. So I have no problem with it. And the big thing I say is if you're annoyed about it, then evolve. But that's my general rule with everything. I talked about this on the Gridiron Address this past Sunday with Aaron and Podcast Smitty too, about the tush push, where if you can't beat it, then evolve it. Don't try and ban it. But again, I'm not going to talk about them a lot, even though that's a big, huge thing right now. And predominantly the reason I don't really feel the need to talk about it is because they've existed for a long time anyway. It's just now they are. And there's this reason why they existed, or why it's in the mainstream rather. The Yankees explode for 9 home runs in a 20-9 win over the Milwaukee Brewers in their second game of the season. Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt, Jazz Chisholm Jr., Anthony Volpe, Austin Wells, and Pizarro all hit home runs. And, offensive game changers need to step up with that banged up rotation. That's really all I can say about that. They're down Cole, they're down Heel. They're definitely without Cole for the year. They're more than likely without Heel for at least a few months here. So they need those guys to step up, even some of those more role players like Wells, like Jazz, like Volpe. And in that game, they did. The Yankees are off to a great start. They just lost their first game to the Diamondbacks in a 2001 World Series rematch. So, yeah, I mean, the Yankees are still my pick to win the East. And so far, that's aging well. Yeah, and then going to the East on the National League, which is what we'll be talking about today. By the way, this is our National League preview. I feel like every week I always kind of forget to say the actual title of it. I'm just, hop right in. But the Marlins walk off their first 3 games of the year, and this is something that hasn't happened in 22 years since the 2004 Rays were the last one to do so. And it's very interesting. The Marlins are off to a good start, and that's really good for them, especially because their roster is kind of bare. So maybe they won't be the worst in baseball / the worst. Maybe they won't be the worst in the National League. I mean, I think objectively the Rockies are more mismanaged. So the Marlins always find a way to just get random people to be at least good, respectable, and turn them into value. But yeah, that's the news for this week. There's been some interesting things to happen. Freddie Freeman tweaked his ankle again, unfortunately, too. That's another thing that happened here recently. He was out of the lineup on the Tuesday night game versus the Braves. So hopefully he can get back in the lineup, can stay healthy, rest him up. Dodgers have an undefeated start. They started 9-0 as of Wednesday, and that's their best start that they have ever had. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy to see that, obviously. But again, baseball is a marathon, not a sprint. They started 7-0. My apologies, not 9-0, 7-0. So, yeah, we're going to go get into the National League here. And as I will do on all of these, I'm going to go start with the last place team, and then I'm going to work my way up. So we're going to go start with the National League East. The National League East is the so far above 500 start, but still haven't being last, is the Miami Marlins. And they have some guys that I do like Otto Lopez has had a good year starting so far, batting .348, limiting the strikeouts as he seems to do, has a really good glove too in that middle infield. They have guys like Griffin Conine, who hit a walk-off home run. Xavier Edwards as well has had a good start. Sandy Alcantara has managed to have a good start to his year too, pitching 9.2 innings in his first 2 starts of the year, 3.72 ERA. Max Meyer was pretty solid as well. The only one that's really been thrown around is Cal Quantrill, but he's, at once a guy that had a pretty solid start, but just to his career, but, has bounced around, left Cleveland, was part of that Cleveland rotation too, that really good Cleveland rotation. But with that being said, I have the Washington Nationals being second to last here. I think that they're going to be a team that's really, really going to turn it around. I think that they can definitely next year or the year after finish in 3rd place or even 2nd place, with Atlanta kind of being on the down run here, with a lot of their core getting either older or struggling to stay healthy. I mean, Ozuna is getting older. Hopefully he's out of the league soon. Not really big on him. I mean, Acuna Jr. has really struggled to stay healthy, which is really sad. And the rotation too is getting a little bit up there. But I have Washington finishing second to last. I think that they have a really, really good young core with James Wood and Dylan Cruz, Mackenzie Gore, Mitchell Parker. All good. CJ Abrams too. All good players to have. And again, I said this, everybody called me crazy. They won the Juan Soto deal. I'll say that every single time I talk about the Nationals. But I think that the Nationals are going to have a respectable year. I really think that they will, and they're going to get better. They have some older guys like Paul DeYoung, like Trevor Williams, like Mike Soroka there as well to guide the younger rotation, guide the younger lineup. And then in third place, I have the Atlanta Braves, the team that is off to an atrocious start in 2025, the worst start they've had in my recent memory. Yeah, I mean it's hard. I mean I think that they're still definitely a contender for wild card team. I didn't think that they deserved to be in the playoffs last year simply because of how injured they were, and basically what I thought was going to happen is what ended up happening to them. Um, yeah, I mean there's a lot of names there: Matt Olson, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Profar was there, Kelnick, Ozuna, Michael Harris, Chris Sale, and then Ronaldo Lopez, Grant Holmes. Jose Suarez, too, a guy I'm big on. Jesse Chavez as well has been respectable. That man knows how to just eat innings. He continues to play at a solid level. But I don't know. I mean, I made this last week. I made this list last week, but I'm still going to stick with it because, we don't go back on our word here. I still think Atlanta will finish in the third, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. So I'm going to spoil that here. And I think that they're going to be the last team out of the playoffs. Either them or Chicago will probably be the last team out. But in second place, I have the New York Mets. I have the New York Mets finishing in second and being the number one wild card seed in 2025. You got Lindor. You got Pete Alonso hit a grand slam a couple nights ago in Houston. Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo. You can't beat it. The rotation is a little bit rough with, Taylor Miguel, Kodai Senga has been off to a little bit of a struggling start, but David Peterson's been solid. And Clay Holmes, too, as their fourth guy, their spot starter guy. I think that's kind of interesting. But I think that the Mets can be really good if they can just congeal. They can just play well together. All those big names, that big payroll that they have, second biggest in the game. And if they can play well together, they can definitely finish in second. But the team that I have in first place is the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies have arguably a top 5 rotation, if not top 3 rotation, with Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Christopher Sanchez. Plus, they picked up Jesus Luzardo as well. They improved the bullpen, keeping Jose Alvarado, picking up Jordan Romero, Matt Strahm. A lot of good parts in that rotation. Then, of course, the lineup. The lineup is still great as long as I can keep them together with Real Muto, with Harper. We picked up Max Kepler, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner. Just so many guys who are so good, and they play very well together. That's the big thing. Most of these guys have played together for quite some time. Brandon Marsh, too. Can't forget about him. These guys have been together since the World Series year, and I think that they have arguably the most playoff experience. They have the most playoff experience by a mile in that division, then probably the second most playoff experience playing together in the league. But yeah, give me the Phillies in first, winning the division, Mets in second as a wild card, Braves in third, just missing out in the playoffs, Washington in fourth, and Miami in fifth. So moving on, we got the NL Central. That's a weird one. And it could kind of go any way. But in last place, I have a team finally breaking the standard. I have a team that finally just cannot get over the hump because they have done nothing. The rotation is barren. The lineup has no power. It has a little bit of speed, but really nothing else. Some good gloves, but I just don't think that they can compete against better teams. I think they can compete against teams in their own division, like the Cubs and like the Pirates, but I don't think they can compete against teams like the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Mets, the Padres, the Giants. I just don't seem to be able to compete with those teams. That's the St. Louis Cardinals. I have the Cardinals finishing in last, but as a respectable last place, with guys like Victor Scott, who went to West Virginia, by the way, Jordan Walker, Alec Burleson, Brendan Donovan, Wilson Contreras, Mason Wynn, names there, but I just feel like they've kind of not been the same. And this is finally going to be the year where I think the wheels fall off for the Cardinals. That rotation is just really rough. Eric Fetty, Matthew Libator, Miles Michaelis is still there. and then Sonny Gray as well. So really, outside of having one of the best closers in the league, probably the best in the National League, Ryan Helsley, there's really not much else there going on in St. Louis. So I have the Cardinals. I have the wheels finally falling off the Cardinals and them bottoming out and finishing in last place. But then eventually having guys like J.J. Weatherholt coming up, having a solid farm system, they'll recover. But they really need to start signing people. They really need to start taking this seriously. And I think that this might be the year that they finally realize they need to start doing that. So in fourth place, I have a team that didn't really do a lot and didn't make a lot of effort also, but this team has a much younger, better core than the Cardinals right now, and that is the Pittsburgh Pirates, led by Paul Skeens, the best pitcher in the National League, the best pitcher arguably in the game right now. I think that he's going to get them probably 20 wins this year. So, you got a great couple, or I wouldn't say great, but you have a good amount of corner pieces with this Pirates lineup with guys like Brian Reynolds, with Key Brian Hayes, who I'm still good on, even though he struggled early in his career, O'Neal Cruz. They picked up Tommy Pham, Joey Bart, Adam Frazier, IKF, but still that's not really enough for them to make much noise. By a mile, I don't have them finishing in last, though. Even though they started 1-5 here, I still think they're going to be better than their roster says. You got Mitch Keller too. You got a 1-2 punch there with Mitch Keller and Paul Skeens. But geez, you gotta do something with David Bednar, because this guy has been really rough the past 2 years, and you can't be doing that as a closer, back end guy. It's just not sustainable at all. In third place, also missing out on the playoffs, I have the Cincinnati Reds, another team with a really young core, a lot to play for, and a lot in front of them, just not this year. Led by the MLB The Show cover, Elly De La Cruz. That's one of the best young players in the league, if you ask me. I mean, you got Encarnacion Strand, you got Gavin Lutz, you got Candelario. That was really the only move that they made. I still think that they'll finish slightly better than the Pirates, because they did pick up a solid few guys in the offseason. They did get Brady Singer. I think he's going to be really good this year. You also have Hunter Green, who is one of the best young pitchers in the league. And yeah, solid bullpen. Little guy. You got guys like Scott Barlow, Sam Moll too. So I don't know. It could be them or the Pirates. It's really hard to tell. Second place, and this is the flip-flop team between Atlanta to maybe get that last wild card spot. I don't have them getting that last wild card spot, though. It's the Chicago Cubs. And the Cubs are trying to compete, which I respect and I like. I mean, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, PCA, Kyle Tucker, they picked up Seiya Suzuki, and then Carson Kelly, who hit for the cycle, by the way, against the A's in that minor league ballpark right there. Justin Steele off to a kind of a rough start. Shota Imanaga, Matthew Boyd, Jameson Tye. That's the thing with this team, is that the main reason I don't think they're going to compete for the division, but I still think that they'll compete for wild card. It's just 50-50 to be able to get it. That rotation really falls off after Steele and Imanaga. And Imanaga's off to a good start, but Justin Steele has been kind of rough. 6.89 ERA. Through 3 games started here. So he can get that down. But he's been facing some tough lineups later this year. I mean, you think about it, he's been facing the Dodgers, he's been facing the Diamondbacks, the Giants, the Mets. Everybody plays everybody too. So you got the American League. You got teams like the Yankees. You got teams like the Rangers too, you can't forget about. And he struggled early against the A's. So that's not a good preview, but I still love Justin Steele. He's still in my potential Cy Young Award race, but still not the greatest start. And you can narrow down who's going to be number one. As of right now, this might change later throughout the year, but as of now, I have nobody else except this team from the NL Central making the playoffs. That's the Milwaukee Brewers. I have the Brewers because are going to brewer, as people are starting to say now. They have the other Contreras, who's pretty much just about as good. They have Joey Ortiz, Bryce Terang, Sal Friola, Christian Yelich. Jake Bowers is there too. And then, of course, you can't forget about Jackson Chirino, the best young player on that team. Probably not even the best in his division, simply because you got Elly De La Cruz and Paul Skeens in that division as well, O'Neal Cruz as well. But yeah, I still think the Brewers are going to find a way despite the slow start. The Brewers are going to brewer. Freddie Peralta's had a solid start to the year. Aaron Savale, Nasty Nestor started rough, but he started against the Yankees, and he was getting beat up on pretty bad. But they'll find a way. They'll find a way. But we're gonna go do another preview of this later in the year, probably somewhere in the All-Star break. We'll do another round of previews. Maybe we'll wait 2 months. It depends. We'll see how we feel here on Dugout Debrief. And then finally, we have the National League West. The National League West, and to start at the bottom in the National League West, I have the Colorado Rockies, who I have being the worst team in the National League. I have them being very close with the Chicago White Sox to being the worst in baseball overall. This team has done nothing. We talked about it last week before, something like that. This team has done nothing. They got rid of Nolan Jones. They have really no pieces there. They have Ryan McMahon. Ezekiel Tovar has statistically been their best player the past 2 years. Jacob Stallings, Hunter Goodman. What is being done here? Again, they signed Chris Bryant to this huge deal. And then, to be completely honest with you guys, I would say that they're the second most forgotten franchise in all of North American sports out of the major four, only behind the Buffalo Sabres. And that says a lot, because I have friends who are into sports a lot, maybe only casually into hockey, and I'll mention the Sabres, and like, Buffalo is another team outside the Bills? So a lot of people say that with Colorado. A lot of people forget that Denver is. And as I've said, as a four-sport city, as I've said before, the teams around you have been successful recently. Avalanche Stanley Cup. Denver with NBA Finals win. The Broncos making moves. Broncos getting better with Bo Nix. You're doing nothing, Rockies. You're a social event. That's kind of an issue, in my opinion. Not to mention that you have a really, really rough starting rotation with Kyle Freeland, German Marquez, Ryan Feltner, in the most hitter-friendly ballpark. That's rough. And that's been a shortcoming with them for a long time, because you have to realize that no elite pitcher wants to sign there, because you're playing half your games in a park that statistically gives up the most home runs. So I have the Rockies being the worst in the National League. And then in fourth place, I have a team that really has made a couple moves, but still is a year or two out, I think, unless they find a way just to randomly make the playoffs like they always sometimes do every few years. It's the San Francisco Giants, led by guys like Tyler Fitzgerald, Heliot Ramos, and in my opinion, the most one of the most consistent players in the league, and Matt Chapman. I mean, that guy was a slam dunk signing, in my opinion. Completely great. I mean, one of the best defensive third basemen in the game. Still young, still talented, has power, has speed. He has all the aspects of the game, and they got him for quite a while. So I like that. They also have Willie Adames, too, who they signed. I think they overpaid him a little bit, but I respect it because it's showing that they're trying. Logan Webb, the biggest innings eater in the game. I really like Logan Webb. You got Jordan Hicks, Robbie Ray, and then you signed a veteran Justin Verlander too. So I like what the Giants are doing. I just think that division is just too hard for them to win this year. Next, I have a team that made a lot of moves, and I have the team that ended the Yankees' undefeated season. That's kind of impossible to do in baseball, but stopped the Yankees from being at least undefeated through 10 games. That's the Arizona Diamondbacks. I have the Diamondbacks being a wild card team. I have a second of our 3 wild cards here. And, they made moves. I mean, they got Corbin Burns. That was a great signing. Zach Gallen is a great pitcher. Brandon Pfaadt is starting to come up here. You got Merle Kelly. You got guys like Shelby Miller in the bullpen, AJ Puck, Jalen Beeks, Bryce Jarvis. I mean, there's people there. And then you have Corbin Carroll, who's one of the fastest guys, hits for average and has a little bit of power. Alec Thomas, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Geraldo Perdomo, Kentel Marte, one of the most underrated infielders in the game, if you ask me. You got Josh Naylor. I mean, you got a lot of pieces there, and I think that they can continue to make the playoffs for a long time. They had a down year last year, a World Series hangover. Both teams had a World Series hangover, but give me Diamondbacks making it back to the playoffs quite comfortably. And then in second place, I have the San Diego Padres. And not much else can be said about them. They're the second best team in that division, probably the third best team in the National League. 6-0 start so far. Really great start for them. Jake Cronenworth, Bogarts, Machado. They signed Jason Hayward to be a mentor. They have, in my opinion, another great young player in Jackson Merrill. And of course, you can't forget about Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, one of the National League MVP perennial candidate every single year and will continue to be as long as he stays off PEDs and he stays healthy. Elias Diaz was a great pickup. They got him from Colorado. Like I said, Colorado just kind of donating all their players, even to their division rivals at this point. And the rotation can use a little bit of work, but they picked up a guy who had a fantastic start. By the way, the guy that I was big on, I wanted everybody to go for this guy. I said this for weeks when we were in the offseason. Nick Pivetta had a great start, 7 scoreless innings and a 1-hitter. And I'm happy that so far I was proven right that Nick Pivetta was the most underrated pitching piece in the free agency market this year. Michael King, who has been really good. Dylan Cease, too, you can't forget about him. And a really good bullpen, even though Tanner Scott's gone. You still got Jason Adam. Still got Robert Suarez, too. Wandy Peralta. They're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. So those are my wild cards. And then lastly, I have the Dodgers. And I'm not even being biased. I mean, it's just hard not to say that Dodgers will finish number 1. Dodgers have started undefeated so far, 7-0, their best start in franchise history. And I mean, what else can be said? Not only do they have the superstars like Ohtani, like Freddie Freeman, like Will Smith, like Mookie Betts, they have depth guys. They have Miggy Rowe. They have Austin Barnes. They have Chris Taylor still there. Andy Pages has made a couple great plays in center field for us. I'm really looking forward to this year because I think that even if we do lose guys, which we will lose guys, somebody's going to get hurt. We still have those depth guys. It's always next man up every single time for the Dodgers. Dodgers have lost guys. Like I always say, we were going in on basically running a 2-man rotation going into this World Series year, and we won the World Series. If we can do that with the pieces that we got now, Dustin May, by the way, hats off to Dustin May for starting for the first time about 2 years here, finally getting healthy. We hope he stays healthy. Sasaki, we got Yamamoto, and we got Tyler Glasnow, of course, too, who's finally hopefully going to stay healthy. That bullpen picked up Tanner Scott. Vesey has been really good. We even got Luis Garcia has been pretty solid, too. Blake Trinan, too. I just picked him up in fantasy. But I have the Dodgers being the best team in the National League, best team in baseball, and we'll do a playoff preview later. But as of right now, just to summarize it, I have the Dodgers being the 1 seed in the National League, Phillies being the 2 seed, Brewers being the 3, best wild card team being the New York Mets, second best wild card team being San Diego, and then the last team in the playoffs getting in over the Braves, getting in over the Chicago Cubs. I have the Arizona Diamondbacks. So, series of the week time. I have 2 of them this week. We're going to be doing this every so often where I have 2. And I have the aforementioned best team in the National League. I have the Dodgers versus the Phillies. I have the 1 versus the 2 seed. Can't get much better than that. It's in Pennsylvania, too. It's in Philadelphia. And the Dodgers and Pennsylvania teams this time of year just do not mix. So I think this is going to be a very, very close series because the Phillies are used to playing in this weather. Dodgers, not so much. We played in Japan. Now we've played in LA. We got our first East Coast trip. And it's going to be in the cold more than likely. I'm really looking forward to this series here this weekend. I'll be watching it. It's 2 electric offenses playing against each other and 2 really good pitching rotations too. If you're into pitching, this is it. I mean, it looks like Wheeler will be going against Colorado on Wednesday, so we probably won't see him. Maybe we'll see him at the end, but the other series of the week I have is the Orioles and the Royals. Those are 2 teams that are definitely going to be at least wild cards in my book. 2 young teams with a lot of young talent, 2 wild card picks. This series could legitimately play a factor all the way this early because Baltimore is going to struggle against teams like New York and Toronto. And the Royals are going to struggle because that division just can't stop beating itself up. They can't start beating each other up. Tigers, Royals, and Orioles all fighting for that. And don't forget, Orioles and the Royals only play twice a year. So Dodgers versus Phillies, Orioles at Royals. Those are my series of the week. Keep an eye on them. Lock them in for entertainment purposes. And to wrap up here, right about at 30 minutes, a little bit quicker of an episode than the past 2 weeks, We got our trivia question. Who was the opening day starter for the Arizona Diamondbacks in their first ever game? And that was Andy Benes. It was a 9-2 loss against the Colorado Rockies in 1998. So yeah, Andy Benes, 9-2 loss. He was the first ever Diamondback starter in their first ever game, which feels it's a little bit interesting to me to think about how the newer teams in baseball now are pretty old. I mean, 98 was the most recent expansion, so Diamondbacks and Rays were the two most recent expansions, and both of those teams have made 2 World Series in their history too, which is saying a lot. So this week's trivia question, pretty simple, pretty easy. I'm going back to 2 sport athletes here. What school did Bo Jackson go to? What school did Bo knows one of the most legendary athletes ever, most legendary athlete of the 1980s. What college did Bo Jackson go to? But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Dugout Debrief. We are in our second week of the MLB season, the second of many. I am very, very grateful to be able to be covering baseball and the best up-and-coming sports YouTube channel, social media, everything on Boom Broadcasting. Make sure you're tuning into Out of Pocket. Make sure you're watching Hoops and Helmets this coming Monday, a great show. Gridiron Address airing pretty much every Sunday still. We're doing draft coverage. We're doing NFL season previews, ranking prospects. I was on there this last week. We ranked our best quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. And, football's still going. We got pro wrestling on here. We got movie reviews. We got a little bit of everything. And I want to thank you again for tuning in to this great program and on this great channel. I hope you have a great week. Enjoy the games.